time is just a little before midnight, the day of September 4th. The year is 1977. We jump into our Delorean equipped with the Flux capacitor and we go back in time and land at Trenton State College in front of Kendall Hall. This is where her music, being played from the piano of a talented pianist, can be heard through the halls of Kendall Hall. Her passion for music was unparalleled, drawing the attention and admiration of all who heard her play, including that one person who will have other plans for this young woman playing the piano. As we enter the building and start following the music, we hear an abrupt end of the music as we get closer to the stage. We see a trail of blood leading us to the stage where we find blood-splattered sheets of music and the body of a young 25-year-old graduate student whose face is unrecognizable. That's exactly what a campus police officer walked into as he was patrolling and walking through Kendall Hall as he found a bicycle outside and went into Kendall Hall to investigate. And many believe that her spirit is trapped in Kendall Hall where she once found solace, where she continues to roam the premises seeking justice of the one who ended her life so abruptly. Is it possible that Sigrid's spirit remains tethered to this realm between Earth and the afterlife, where they are stuck here because they haven't finished what they needed to finish, forever yearning for justice? Or are these merely tales spun from the shadows of the past? Welcome to the Campfire. Grab your s'mores and grab a seat. Thanks for joining me tonight around the campfire where we discuss the dark world of true crime. I am your host, Kevin. This is the Campfire Crime Chronicles, a true crime podcast. And this is still the unsolved case of Sigrid Stevenson. Before we get into the case tonight, I want to thank the show's sponsor, BetterHelp, for helping keep the flame lit of the campfire for this episode. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service that's 100% online. So you don't have that awkwardness of sitting in a waiting room with a whole bunch of other strangers waiting to see your therapist. With BetterHelp, you have access to a network of over 25,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with whatever you're dealing with. All you have to do to get started is answer some questions about what your needs and preferences are in therapy. So that way, BetterHelp can match you with a therapist that is right for you. And if you want to change your therapist because maybe you're not comfortable with them, you can change your therapist at any time for no additional charge. You also don't have to wait any specific time or any number of sessions to change your therapist. So when you match up with that right therapist, you can talk to your therapist however is most comfortable for you, whether it's text, chat, phone, or video. You can also message your therapist at any time and schedule live sessions when it's convenient for you and your schedule. With BetterHelp, you get the same professionalism and quality you expect from in-office therapy, but with a therapist who is custom-picked for you, with more scheduling flexibility and more affordable prices. So if you go to the website and use the show's code, betterhelp.com/CCC, not only does that let them know that you heard it at the campfire, but you'll also receive 10% off your first month. So that's betterhelp.com/CCC. BetterHelp, HELP.com/CCC. And I'll also have a link provided in the show notes. Sigrid Stevenson, born January 24th, 1952, in Livermore, California. At some point in her life, she moved to New Jersey when her father took on a teaching position at Princeton University. Kind, very independent, and adventurous, Sigrid would hitchhike from New Jersey to Canada. Sigrid loved music and had a strong passion to play the piano. She was attending Trenton State College, which is now known as the College of New Jersey, majoring in music and had ambitions to become a music teacher. At the time of her death, she was in her master's program for music. The College of New Jersey would change its name 5 times since its first opening in 1925. And then in 1928, they purchased 210 acres in Ewing, New Jersey, with plans of relocating the college. The college, when it first opened, was the first to offer bachelor programs. According to reports, her friends said that she didn't have a boyfriend at the time of the murder. The summer leading to the night of the murder, Sigrid rented a room from a professor, then would move in with a volunteer firefighter from Ewing, New Jersey, for a brief period. Sigrid would find herself being in between places to stay after her vacation and before her host family would return to town. Sigrid needed a place to stay for a few days and would stay in Kendall Hall. According to reports, she had spent 2 to 3 nights there already prior to the murder. This wasn't anything new for Sigrid, though. She would often stay in buildings or sneak into them after hours. Telltale signs of her presence was her green bicycle sitting outside of the building that she was frequently in. On the night of September 4th, 1977, according to reports, it was believed Sigrid had attended a performance that night at Kendall Hall and then either stayed over after the performance finished or snuck back in to play the piano. Kendall Hall had a door that didn't latch properly to lock, so you could pull it hard enough you would be able to open it and enter the building. While she was playing the piano, an unknown assailant would come up from behind and strike Sigrid in her head with an object. Then he would brutally beat her in the face until she was unrecognizable. She suffered fractures of the skull and her face. Her nose was broken, 2 ribs were broken, and she suffered a plethora of lacerations on her face and scalp. Then the perpetrator would leave her body covered with the piano's dust cover. Shortly before midnight, a campus officer that was patrolling the area noticed a bicycle parked outside the auditorium. Assuming that it was Sigrid's bike, as it was pretty well known that her bike outside was an indication that she was in the building. When the officer entered the Kendall Hall to investigate, he spotted a trail of blood that would lead to the stage and that led directly over to the piano. When he lifted the dust cover, he found Sigrid's bloody body. She was face down, completely naked, with her blood-drenched skirt wrapped around her face. Her hands had been tied behind her back, and she wasn't robbed, and there was conflicting reports that she was and wasn't sexually assaulted. I wasn't able to confirm which one it was, but obviously a naked body is usually presumed that they were sexually assaulted. There was also reports of a piano chord being used, but it was never confirmed. When Sigrid's teacher and friends were asked to identify her, all they could identify her was her hair, because of her face being completely unrecognizable. Some reports mentioned that she was hit and beaten with a blunt object and had blunt force trauma, while other reports mentioned that she was strangled, presumably with a piano chord that was never confirmed by investigators. However, according to a source, when they did the autopsy, there wasn't any evidence of trauma to her throat, neck, or larynx that would be caused by strangulation. Police interviewed and questioned 100 or so people, and a lot of them were even interviewed and questioned twice. However, police never stated officially if there was a suspect or even a person of interest. There was unofficial rumors that police had a suspect, but didn't have enough evidence or didn't have any evidence to make a case against that individual. A local private investigator would get involved, and according to a source, he posted on social media that this would be a cover-up by police and that someone involved was in local law enforcement and who is also still alive today, who is responsible for this murder and is walking free and collecting his pension. This was reported by a third-party source, and I wasn't able to locate the private investigator to verify this, as no names or business was referenced in this report. According to that report, also, the private investigator stated that, quote, given the magnitude of the beating, it looks like it was personal and that she knew her killer, end quote. The report that I read about the private investigator was from a third-party source, so it was hard to verify if this information was accurate, as they didn't mention the name of the private investigator nor the business. Stated in the article they weren't giving out the name of the business or the person to protect their identity. So there may be merit to this report or there may not, so take it as you will. I want to thank the show's sponsor, BetterHelp, for helping keep the flame lit of the campfire for this episode. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service that's 100% online. So you don't have that awkwardness of sitting in a waiting room with a whole bunch of other strangers waiting to see your therapist. With BetterHelp, you have access to a network of over 25,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with whatever you're dealing with. All you have to do to get started is answer some questions about what your needs and preferences are in therapy. So that way, BetterHelp can match you with a therapist that is right for you. And if you want to change your therapist because maybe you're not comfortable with them, you can change your therapist at any time for no additional charge. You also don't have to wait any specific time or any number of sessions to change your therapist. So when you match up with that right therapist, you can talk to your therapist however is most comfortable for you, whether it's text, chat, phone, or video. You can also message your therapist at any time and schedule live sessions when it's convenient for you and your schedule. With BetterHelp, you get the same professionalism and quality you expect from in-office therapy, but with a therapist who is custom-picked for you, with more scheduling flexibility and more affordable prices. So if you go to the website and use the show's code, betterhelp.com/CCC, not only does that let them know that you heard it at the campfire, but you'll also receive 10% off your first month. So that's betterhelp.com/CCC, betterhelp, HELP.com/CCC. And I'll also have a link provided in the show notes. Since Sigrid's death, there had been several reports of paranormal activity that have occurred in Kendall Hall. A former student worker reported that they had seen a paper towel float from one side of the bathroom into the garbage can on the other side of the room. There wasn't any windows or open vents in where the vicinity of the bathroom that could have caused that. Other students have reported occasionally having felt someone behind them or footsteps and doors closing for no reason. A psychic would visit Kendall Hall after hearing and reading about the case. From what I've read, though, it almost sounds like they were a psychic medium. I've done another case where psychics were used, and this won't be the last one either. If you haven't already, check out Episode 6, Murder in a Quiet Town, where police received help from a psychic to solve a murder. The psychic mentioned in her findings while looking into the case that, quoted, when Sigrid was on stage, there was a guy that was watching her for a little while. Either her back was turned while she was playing the piano or she was too involved with her music to notice him, end quote. The psychic mentioned that they believed he was wearing a uniform of sorts and that he had curly hair along with carrying something on the side of his pants, most likely keys. The psychic also mentioned that Sigrid knew him, but not very well. He made an advance, but she fought him back. He got angry, and when he got tough, she scratched and did something to his eye. That's when he got violent, as stated by the psychic. It's not known as there was no mention of it, but police didn't collect any DNA samples from Sigrid's nails, clothes, or body, or anywhere from the rest of the scene. If they had collected DNA and saved it until DNA technology had gotten better, then perhaps we could have found out who murdered Sigrid, and they would probably be in prison right now. Back then, they probably didn't think about collecting any DNA, if they had, because DNA was just starting to come to light for DNA testing. So it was in its very infancy stages and probably back then not reliable like it is today. The psychic would go on to say that Sigrid's spirit was still hanging around because she has yet to forgive her killer, who may still be alive. He didn't appear old, probably in his late 20s or 30s at the time of the murder, which would then put him in his 50s or 60s, the psychic would state in her report. The psychic speculated that she isn't happy with how the investigation has been going. She would also say that the man is not remorseful and thinks that she got what she deserved. These are all feelings and thoughts that the psychic had whenever she was sensing Sigrid's spirit about the guy who did this to her. So after the psychic made her reports and claims, there was the theater of scholars apparently trying to hold a seance to resurrect the spirit of Sigrid. Supposedly, when they turned on a radio that they brought with them, they couldn't get any reception. However, someone whispered over the static, "Get out." It was speculated that this was Sigrid's spirit, but who really knows? I know there's a lot of speculation about psychics and psychic mediums, but as they have proven in recent past of the Campfire, and even in future episodes, we'll talk about how psychics have helped investigators. From the research, it does seem that investigators did miss an opportunity to collect DNA, and if the psychic was right about the killer dumping clothes in the dumpster, did authorities search the dumpster and find clothes? We don't know for sure if they did or didn't find any clothes or search that area because it was never mentioned in reports. So that might have been something that they were keeping close and not publicly known to not tip off the killer. Or maybe they do know who the killer is, and maybe they let him off because it was somebody that they knew, or maybe the killer even worked with investigators on the case. Then he could have directed the investigation in different directions and away from him. So another question that I came up with while doing this research was, what was the object that was used? Was it something that the killer brought with him, or was it something that he found when he got there? Because that tells a lot. If it was something he brought, then this was premeditation and he knew that Sigrid would be there and was planning this. Or maybe he wasn't even planning on murdering Sigrid, that he was just planning on raping her. And in the moment when she started fighting back was when he shifted gears and went into murder. So there's a lot of speculation about why Sigrid was murdered. Was it by someone she knew, or was it stranger on stranger? If we go by the psychic's reports and the private investigator's reports, then it was someone she knew. And from the research, it pointed more towards somebody she knew than stranger on stranger, but there's no hard concrete evidence of pointing in either direction. So that concludes this case at the Campfire. It was hard finding information about this case, as there was not a lot of information to gather and find about this case. All resources used to gather information include, but not limited to, news articles, reports, documentaries, as well as other sources. I appreciate everyone who has gathered by the Campfire with me for this case. Also, I'm working on a different bonus content feature to where subscribers can access everything in one place, wherever you get your podcasts. Up until now, I've been using Patreon, and I will probably keep Patreon at least for the time being. Once everything is changed over, I will let you guys know. I appreciate all the support from all the listeners and supporters. Also, if you wish to support the show but not necessarily sign up for a subscription, you can support the show with the S'mores Fund through the website campfirecrimechronicles.com. A link will be provided into the show notes, as well as a link for this episode's sponsor, BetterHelp. So join me next time in 2 weeks as we gather around the campfire for the next case that we dive into. And remember to sleep with one eye open. This is the Campfire Crime Chronicles, a true crime podcast.